I spent a lot of time recently focusing on this issue of group identity and group hate because we're having this sort of resurgence of this belligerent hatred and ignorance, but it's now being focused on new groups, right? For the last 10 years, we had to deal with the anti-white, especially the anti-white male stuff, which was absolutely ridiculous and messed up. And it actually, it did more damage to your average white person, your average white male, than most people understand. I imagine the suicide rates skyrocketed for white males because of the movement. And so it is actually responsible for death. So we had to deal with that. And, I saw this coming about a year and a half ago where I said, now that the whole left thing is finally losing gas, you're going to see a reactionary right that essentially does the same thing in reverse, right? I just didn't realize it was going to be this bad. And I didn't realize that people were going to be this belligerent. I thought that if you said common sense, reasonable things, that you could get most people to the table to have a healthy civil conversation. Well, I learned that wasn't true, right? Because every time I made a post or wrote a note or whatever about boomers or women or black people coming to the defense and not in some way like I'm not cucking for these people, right? Just like I wasn't cucking for white people. I was sitting here being like, no, that's crazy what you're saying right now. Like, like there's reasonable criticism and then there's this delusional hate that you have. And there's a big difference. And it should be obvious, I think, to most people. Unfortunately, it seems that it isn't. So every time I went to bat for these people, for these groups, 90% of the comments were people that not only disagreed, but were unwilling to have any reasonable compromise or have a healthy conversation with me. They started angry immediately. And like they needed to prove me wrong. And they wanted me to feel bad about being wrong in their eyes, right? And so the most recent one has been the most frustrating. And interestingly enough, whenever I discuss Black issues, this is when I get the most hate. This is when I get the most problems. This is when, when I was on TikTok, I struggled the most to actually get the video posted without it getting taken down. I wasn't doing anything inappropriate. I was literally just talking about Black folks, talking about Black culture. I didn't do anything inappropriate on either side. Like I didn't do something that would disrespect black people and be misconstrued as hate speech. And I also didn't do it in reverse. Not that anybody gave a shit about hate speech against white people, but I wasn't doing anything that would violate any community standards. And you wouldn't believe how many times these videos would be muted so that no one could hear what I was saying. And then the captions would also be messed up and they weren't actually putting the words that I was saying. It was all messed up and goofed up, which was ridiculous, or they just wouldn't post, or they'd be taken down. And I wouldn't get any reason besides violation of community guidelines. They usually tell you like the violation. Well, they stopped even doing that. And I had never had more trouble with my content than when I talk about black folks. And I've seen it over and over again. So, from the perspective of someone who's actually creating this stuff, trust me when I tell you, I get more shit from people and from the technology that I'm trying to use to post the information than any other topic. That in and of itself for me is suspect. And I've thought about that, and I've talked to some black folks about that and what they think. And they'll tell like, yes, welcome to our world, right? And there's a certain part of that I think that is very true. That there is some sort of conspiracy, either small or large, to quiet the truth about black folks. And so I want to spend a decent amount of time talking about that and trying to elaborate my position for all of these people that came in angry at me, came in saying nigga with a hard R, came in calling them a subspecies, came in calling them all animals, came in saying that they're all violent. It's gross and none of it is true. Um, And they kept on accusing me of taking positions I wasn't taking. For instance, so we'll just kick this off. This is so important because it touches on a much larger issue that affects all of us. And I am so disheartened and so appalled by what we've become and how much of our humanity we have lost. So I really hope that you stick around for this video. I hope maybe you share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And I hope maybe that some of the information touches you in such a way that you feel compelled and convicted to spread this message of love and unity and harmony and respect and tolerance for one another. So the first argument I made was that much of the violence in African American communities can be directly tied to all the violence that was committed against them. To me, this is obvious. I know it's true. I'm going to give you one proof. Maybe I'll give you several proofs throughout the video as they pop in my head, but I'm going to give you a really easy proof as to how that's absolutely true. Okay, so if you study criminology, like even if you just take a criminology 101 class in college, which I took criminology, I believe in high school as like a bridge class, and then I took a criminology class in college. And then I just studied criminology on my own. Just kind of like the basic principles, community resilience, siege mentality, crime rates and what affects crime rates, et cetera, et cetera. So I started learning quite a bit about this. And now I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the ghetto. I had black friends that were not violent, that were very cool. I knew a lot of black folks that were very violent. I was getting jumped by black people because I was white, et cetera, et cetera. I was like the target, right? So I experienced that reverse racism. So if anybody's got a reason to be mad at black people, it's me, and I'm not. Because I paid attention and because I had black folks that were really great friends that would stick up for me against other black people that were hating on me because I was white. I've had beautiful, brilliant, soulful, loving, kind, um, compassionate black friends. And so I know it's not true that all black people are animals and da 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 da, because I experienced it myself directly. And not just with African Americans, with Africans, with actual Africans who had come over here for school, who had migrated here for work from Somalia, from Sudan, from Ethiopia, etc. Also, lovely people, largely, largely do not fit the mold of this racist hate. So let's talk about. So the statement I made was, yeah, that not all black people are inherently violent, and the things that have happened to them directly affect the way they behave now. And that black people, barring like if we don't talk about Native Americans, have gone through the worst experience in America out of all people. There's this whole movement where it's like, stop talking about it. You know, they're dwelling on it. That's why they're like that. It's like, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is explaining to you that these things have real impacts that are largely out of our control. Here's an example. If we accept the idea that systemic racism was ever a thing, that at any time black people were being mistreated by a largely white and dominated legal system, justice system. I think there's enough evidence to suggest that for a certain period of time, black people were being treated unfairly and disproportionately to white people in the justice system. Incarceration, conviction of crimes usually disproportionately affect adult males. If more black people, if more black males are being wrongfully incarcerated or killed when they shouldn't have been killed by a police officer, that means that a disproportionate amount of black kids are going to grow up without fathers. That's common sense. Everything I just said is common sense. We know from very good research that a lack of a father in the household significantly increases your chances to commit crimes and go to jail. We know that's true. So if there was something being done to black people unfairly by our systems that ended up removing many fathers from the household, and we know that an absent father in a household increases the chances the kids will go to jail, that is that basically what that says is those kids are going to be less well adjusted to society. They're going to be more likely to commit crimes. They're going to be more likely to not healthily respect healthy authority. It sounds like that's made them more inclined to commit crimes and more violent, right? And I'm sure drawing that connection, we can also support that with evidence. Just that small thing, We just showed changes the crime rates, changes the violence rates. Clearly, an absence of a father, which is basically the primary authority figure, probably makes it so that the kids don't learn the importance of authority and respecting healthy authority, like to a healthy degree. And therefore, they go out into the world and they have less respect for the authority and the hierarchies and the chains of command and competency and things of this nature. And they're more likely to do something stupid. So, right there, those kids didn't have a chance to be at the same level as kids who had a father. But the reason they don't have a father is because of tyranny, not because the dad just didn't care and walked away. There's situations where that happens. There's situations where that happens with every race. But if there was any mistreatment or discrimination systemically and consistently over the course of decades or even centuries, if it has an impact in one generation, as I just explained it does, then if that only gets worse as the tyrannical system stays in place, you get a compounding interest of trauma and lack of education and lack of authority and lack of social cohesion and community resilience within these communities. All of these things are connected. And when those things start falling apart, on top of the fact that when you're down, they're kicking you. It's like, I can't believe when people come to these conversations, they are unwilling to talk about segregation, slavery, Jim Crow. I am not one of these radical left wokists that are going to make excuses for the plight of African Americans today and the decisions they make excuses for all that behavior and say, well, because of this, they're allowed to do that. I'm not saying that. This is not an excuse for the behavior. It's an explanation for it. And what I'm saying is very logical. That stuff has real impacts. All I'm arguing is that maybe we should look at that and see if there's something we can do to undo it. Because if we undo it, maybe we undo the problem with violence. But if you want to make the argument that Black people are inherently more violent, I don't know, because they have more melanin in their body and that somehow makes you more violent. Like, what argument are you making when you say that Black people are just Black in general are more violent than white people? Like, what argument are you making? Like, can you now supply the biological evidence that shows why people with more melanin and whatever other differences they have from white people are inherently more violent? Because when I read the history books, it's usually the West, the mostly white West, who has committed atrocities against Black people, Native Americans, South Americans. That's also violence. So when we're having a conversation like, oh, well, there's all these rogue militias in Africa, it's like, where did they come from? Because some of those rogue militias are being funded by America, right? So like, it's this dynamic, nuanced conversation, and no one's willing to have it. No one's willing to have it. So that's the argument I was making. One, that Black people aren't inherently more violent than white people, like all Black people. Like you know what I mean? Like not all Black people are violent is essentially what I was saying. I wasn't even saying that Black people aren't inherently more violent. Maybe they slightly are. Maybe there's something in the DNA or the blood that makes them more violent. I'm not even arguing that. And this is what people would come and start arguing with me about as if I said that. I didn't say that. All I said was not all Black people are violent or hyperviolent. Two, the things that have happened to Black people directly affect violence rates, crime rates, IQ rates, economic stability, these sorts of things. That is absolutely true. You can't refute those two things. And this is the positions I was taking. I wasn't excusing the behavior. I wasn't saying, well, they get to rob people and commit more crime because this is because of slavery. I'm not saying that. I'm saying maybe part of the reason they do this more often is because of all the shitty things that happened generationally and it messed them up. It screwed up their culture. It screwed up the family dynamic. It screwed up these communities. It destroyed the community resilience. All these things are true. Everything that I'm saying is true. And 90%, 95, I'm not sure I got one positive comment, actually, to be honest with you, in the last 3 days. Um, it was all negative. It was all angry. It was all like dramatic and being even extra shitty to me and to black people the whole time instead of just having a conversation with me. They were immediately angry at me for even bringing up the topic. That's crazy to me. So it, I could go on for hours about slavery, about how they purposely bred for stupidity. They purposely bred to be big, strong, and stupid in slavery. How black people were lynched, were stabbed, were beaten if they tried to learn how to read. How they were considered three-fifths of a person by the government. um, how entire communities were firebombed by the Ku Klux Klan and funded by the government, how the CIA distributed crack specifically in black communities, how the Nixon administration targeted black people as if they were enemy combatants. Like they looked at them like, oh, they're a problem. We can't let them unify. How the government probably was responsible for the assassination of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X simply because they were raising awareness and strengthening cohesion within black communities. All these things are horrible. And it's real. It all happened. Like it's not one of those things where you're like a lot of this shit actually happened. I'm sure there's some exaggeration somewhere. We've seen a lot of exaggerations recently. I'm not talking about the recent bullshit that people are saying. I'm talking about what we know actually fucking happened. These things have happened, just like with Native Americans. The atrocities committed against Native Americans. And most people be like, well, we were more technologically advanced and we won, and they shouldn't be crying about it. Oh, they were violent too, as if you don't have a right to defend yourself when someone invades your land. Anyway, uh, so as I'm going through these conversations with people, and I'm thinking back, I'm like, I am basically only getting the hateful comments from people that not only disagree with what I'm saying, are like belligerent and ignorant about it. It's one thing if someone's like, well, I have a couple people on here, so shout out to those people. I won't na name any names specifically, but you know who you are. When you come in, you have like an intelligent, civil conversation with me. I'm civil with you. And we're like, okay, that's interesting. I'll look into that. Primarily, though, it's angry, hateful people, no matter what I talk about, right? So I was thinking the other day, I'm like, interesting. When I was defending white people, I got mostly angry non-white people yelling at me. When I defended women, I got mostly angry men yelling at me. When I defended boomers, I had mostly angry young people, et cetera, et cetera. It was never someone who was kind of in the middle. If I was defending boomers, maybe a late generation X said, hey, I can see both sides, da, 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 da. It was never boomers that came in and being like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm a boomer. I can tell you what he's saying is true. And it was just all whatever the opposite of what I was talking about. All the people had the opposite view. And so I started to get a little suspicious about that because there's only two conclusions you can come to. One is that people largely don't care when you're trying to do something good. And they don't care to put the effort into supporting it or being a part of the conversation, which is kind of weird because we're talking about all these different groups and all these different sides. So it'd be weird that like they care to be angry, but they don't care to be happy and fix a problem, which is a very scary prospect if that's true. That's one possible conclusion as to why because I'm seeing it on my side. I'm posting the video, I'm posting the note, I'm seeing the responses. Right. Whenever I talk about this group identity stuff, almost always it's like 90 to 100% angry, hateful, trollish, uncivilized, and no one that either is skeptical in the middle of what I'm saying or supporting it. It's all the angry, hateful stuff. So either the people that actually have common sense and have good hearts are don't are apathetic to trying to fix the issues, or the algorithm is purposely only showing my content to the people who are going to fight with me about it, which we know Facebook was doing a decade ago. They admitted to it, that they were purposely trying to rile people up and get show people the content that was going to make them the most angry. We know Facebook was doing it. Maybe all the other social medias are doing it too. Then we have to ask ourselves why they're doing it. I'll tell you why I think they're doing it. For the same reason they've got all of you fighting over identity politics, because it keeps us separated. That's what this is all about, folks. And I can't believe how many people are falling into traps. It is fine for you to argue, like, certain books that were made about differences in IQ. It's absolutely completely normal for you to argue that some races have a higher or lower IQ than other races. But then at the same time, educate yourself on the Western Cartesian model and the standard model of IQ and how that in and of itself is skewed to Western values and that it does not measure the entire spectrum of intelligence. I wrote a mini book on intelligence, how it works, where it comes from, what it means, and then what intelligence actually is. It's really worth the read, I think. It'll really help people to understand what IQ actually is and how to increase your IQ because you can naturally and easily increase your IQ. It's crazy easy. And I do a little proof in there that will give you an aha moment like, holy shit, that's exactly right. Essentially, you can study for an IQ test and improve your IQ scores. So, what does that tell you about IQ? Anyway, it's fine to have these conversations that are tough conversations about race. That's important, I think. It is totally normal for a country to want racial and ethnic autonomy. That actually is much better than what we have in America right now. As far as who goes where is a completely different question. Because as soon as you consider Native Americans, as soon as you consider the fact that Africans were kidnapped from Africa against their will and brought here, as soon as you consider the fact that many white people are extremely mixed and there's not really necessarily a predominant, and they don't have any room over in Europe anyway. So it's a difficult conversation like, well, where does everyone go? Well, where is everyone's rightful place? Where would everyone now fit in culturally? Um, but all those things are normal things to talk about. But the way people are talking about it is largely belligerent and hateful and stupid and ignorant. And people are ignorant and they are as arrogant as they are ignorant. And then they're mean and shitty about it. Yesterday, someone said, well, rich black people commit more crimes than poor black people. And this is what I said. Can I see the data? Because I was looking for it, I couldn't find it. Why don't you look for it yourself? I said, I just did, and I couldn't find it. Could you just give me the link? And there was like three or four people that did this. And I was like, I just want to see it. It says, I'm not even arguing with you. Not to mention, you giving me that data isn't going to disprove anything I've said because I didn't say that black people aren't more, or African Americans, right, aren't more um, violent on average than white people. That's not what I said. I never said that. Um, so I said, even if you give the data, it's not going to disprove anything. I said, but it will add context to what we're talking about. I was interested in getting the information. So I was being drug along for 2 days on this. Finally, someone finally posts a screenshot of something from the Justice Department and they say, go fuck yourself. These are evil, retarded assholes. I wasn't mean or I says it doesn't, I didn't say it doesn't exist. You're lying. I said to one person, looks like you're lying because you've been denying giving me the information for 2 days. It says you're making yourself look like you're just lying and bullshitting me because I keep asking for it. I've looked for it. I couldn't find it. And you're saying that you don't need to give it to me. You don't want to waste your time. I says, that sounds like you're lying to one person. And then the next day, another random person, first thing they said to me, they posted a screenshot of this data table and they said, go fuck yourself. That was the start of the conversation for them. Pieces of shit. Why is it so hard to have a civil conversation? I'm just I'm just starting a conversation about something that is extremely relevant and important to our current state as a collective community. There's so much hate. We just had to deal with 10 years of evil hate. Like people were calling for white genocides. evil. That was evil. And I went to bat all the time, right? Even as a white person who, you know what I mean? Like, if you try to get into that conversation, well, a white person's defending themselves. Look, like, you know what I mean? But I still did it because I'm pro-human. I'm pro us getting along, getting our shit together, and fixing the actual problems and going after the actual bad guys. And it seems like many people aren't. Many people are too busy trying to find out which group they can blame. Same thing, women and the anti-men stuff. Went to bat every day against that or against this hate. Now it's turned the tide. Now it's men hating on women. I'm going to bat for that. And what do I get? What do I get? Only the angry dudes that need to be right and want to date a robot. But what do I also get? I get women coming in and saying, I'm not defending them enough. So I'm fucking exhausted to the point where I'm sitting here. Everything I'm saying I know it makes sense. I know what I'm saying is reasonable, rational, tempered. But when all you're getting is these belligerent assholes, you start to question your own sanity. Have I lost my mind? Did slavery not happen? Does it not even exist? Did all of the great things that happen in Africa or the Middle East or India with those people doing their own thing not happen? Did that Leopold guy not mass murder tons of fucking whatever it was, Africans or South Americans? Did 60 million Native Americans not die? That's where I start going because I'm just wondering how it is that either everyone has completely forgot that all these things happen and are happening. There's still genocides being committed right now. Like with the Palestine stuff. How how many insane people were celebrating the deaths of children and saying, well, because Hamas, so because of Hamas, it's okay to kill innocent what? And eventually you're just sitting there questioning your own sanity. And like I'm inclined to think that the algorithm is fucked up and they're doing what Facebook did 10 years ago, which is only showing your stuff to people who will be angry about it. And so with when you're trying to do something you think is right, you're trying to help people, you're trying to protect people who need protection, like small children being blown up by bombs, for instance. And all you're getting is a bunch of people telling you to take your meds and you're a woke leftist or you're a racist rightist. It's hard to get your bearings because there's barely anyone that's speaking up. So you just start to feel like maybe I'm just a complete asshole and I'm wrong. But then when you get off this fucking computer and you just sit there, no, what I'm saying makes perfect sense. Like I gave you that proof in the beginning about incarceration, maybe wrongful incarceration of black males and how that affects obviously single mother households and how that affects kids and how that affects the amount of time they go to jail, which obviously has a connection to how much crime they're actually committing, right? Even if there is wrongful convictions, if there's I mean, it's a significant increase. I thought I read that it was 9 times more likely to go to jail. So obviously, part of that is an impact of them actually not having the skills to maybe stabilize emotionally, right? And then their emotions get out of hand and they commit a crime, not understanding the importance of healthy authority, et cetera, et cetera. So I showed a proof of how what I said was true, that things like socioeconomic status and historical violence against the people can absolutely affect crime rates and violence. And I'm sitting here questioning my sanity because of how psychotic the internet has become. And so I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted um, at going to bat. And I'm almost like it's ironic, right? Because the irony is, as I'm defending all of these people, whoever it is, I go to defense of whatever I think is the most important and relevant. So when I see something in the culture, I see a zeitgeist moving or the zeitgeist, it's the fake zeitgeist, right? It's the overlaid psyop zeitgeist. It's not the real zeitgeist of the human consciousness. It's what they're wanting our human consciousness to think about. When I see something bubble up to the surface that is evil, I pay attention on that thing as it's happening. Because I hope that maybe I can teach a lesson, there can be a learning lesson there, and maybe I can help to shift the culture in whatever small or big ways I possibly can to bring us back to peace and love, friends. Peace and love. Um, but no matter who I defend, it's always like the opposite person or someone who's aligned themselves opposite to whatever group I'm defending who is giving me hate. So from my perspective, I'm getting hate from everyone that I'm defending. I'm getting hate from everyone for saying, let's try to maintain our humanity. And I can't tell you how sad and hopeless that makes me feel. After years and years and years of doing this and trying to get people to understand how important it is for us to care about each other and love each other and criticize each other and give tough love when it's necessary. But at the end of the day, be civil, be reasonable, hold the individuals who commit crimes accountable for what they've done, but to not let your hate spread into places it shouldn't be. This is why we're losing. There is so much hate in the world and ignorance. There's not enough hugs. There's not enough laughter. And there's not enough love. So, I gotta tap out of that conversation. Um, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna focus on, the stuff that we were doing before, meditation, understanding magic and philosophy and cutting edge science and the whole UFO alien stuff and getting to the bottom of this supernatural ecosystem. Because as much as all of my heart is in trying to get people back to namaste, to get people to understand what Christ was talking about, to bring us back to before we were all taught to do 2 minutes of hate every two fucking minutes, 24 hours a day. I don't know if it's possible anymore with the architecture of the internet and the way the algorithms work and how many people's hearts have been hardened and how many people have become wicked and evil, willingly and willfully. There doesn't seem to be a place to talk about matters of the heart, to have an open mind, to get people to work collectively, to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, man, and understand what they've gone through. And not to make excuses, just to understand them. It doesn't even seem like anyone wants the problems to be fixed. Because if they wanted the problems to be fixed, they'd have deeper conversations about whatever it is, whatever the reason the problem has been created. It's not the conversations people are having. Just hateful shit. No matter who, everyone's a target. We've been so compartmentalized and stratified. We don't even see each other anymore. It took 5 fucking years to get the majority of the people to hate each other. I can't fucking believe it. They locked you in your homes. The government, this oligarchy, who's your actual enemy, locked you in your homes and then filled the screens with all this hateful shit, deep fakes, trolls, bots, and slowly constructed this new personality that you have, this new identity that thinks you hate this group or thinks that you're superior to this group. This is all taught to you in the last 5 years. So, I just don't, it's a losing battle. I mean, it's bad enough how hard it is for me to reach the people I'm trying to reach with all the meditation stuff, right? Because when I make the meditation stuff and I talk about the UFOs, again, I think the algorithm is constructed that it's going to show my stuff to people that hate it or don't care about it. That seems to be what's happening all the time. It became very obvious to me in these last week or two. I was like, wow, this is only being shown to people who hate it. And I know what I'm saying isn't something so ridiculous and insane. Like it's a very moderate position I have. It's not radical left, it's not radical right. It's right in the middle. It's like, hey, let's talk about this a little more. Let's workshop this. I think there's more to this idea than just all these people are bad. It's the most reasonable position to take. And it's skeptical because it's not drawing serious conclusions like absolutist conclusions. It's asking for a deeper conversation and it's getting that much hate. I would assume that the algorithm is basically adjusted to make your content. Maybe not, and maybe it doesn't target everyone. Who knows? But it seems like it's programmed to get people to be more angry and upset, which is probably why the depression and anxiety and suicide rates are all skyrocketing. It's not like the internet itself, it's how the internet behaves. It puts you in front of all the people that hate you. It's screwed up. But at least with those topics, they're not so they don't incite so much fury. I'm still gonna get, oh, you schizoid, mentally ill, take your meds for, talking about meditation and God and all that. But it's too much, man. It's too much hate. I don't give a shit if you disagree with me, but you can disagree with me in a level-headed way. Shit, even if I started one of the notes the other day, like, for all you clowns that think black people are inherently violent, all black people are inherently violent. You're a clown if you think that. You're a clown who hasn't had any black friends. If you think that all black people are significantly violent, they're all animals. That's an insane, retarded, shitty position to have. It's not true. All you have to do is have one black friend who doesn't go to jail for committing a crime for that to be untrue. So I say, for all the clowns, if that's enough to make a bunch of people go psycho on me, and there's time, and the reason that I'm just pretty much blunt about it now is because I used to be really nice about all this stuff. I used to like be super, and you know what happened? More hate, more trolling, more angry. What I've learned about people is that with the people who are messed up in the head, people who are like mean and violent and abusive, if you don't come strong, if you don't come out fist up, at least in a conversation, they're going to be more aggressive and violent if you're polite because they think they can get away with it and then they can push you around. When you're dealing with those types of people, the best thing to do is take a fighting stance as you're saying what you're saying. And so verbally, that's what I've started doing because you maybe you used to catch more bees with honey. Not anymore, friends. It's a different world. People have really been socially engineered on a mass scale in ways like I don't think we can even really appreciate how much people have been basically demonically possessed, large scale across the world, have been wickified, have been made to be evil, for lack of a better word. So, it just it hurts my heart, man. And I think it's like affecting me physically. I think I'm starting to feel physically ill. Like I'm not getting sick like that way, but like my muscles are tense. I have a stomach ache. I'm like, well, what did I do today? Like even when I'm fasting, like not eating any food, so it couldn't be any food allergies. But I get on here and I have to have I feel physically awful after I'm done with one of these conversations because they don't go anywhere. It's not just a debate or an argument where we agree to disagree. Because every now and then I have those on here. I don't feel angry. I don't feel sad about any of that. I'm just like, "Yeah, all right, that's actually an interesting point. I'll have to look into that. I'm not looking to be fucking right here, man. I'm looking to find out what is actually right because it doesn't add up for me. Last thing about the African American situation. The reason I bring these things up is not because there's some asshole the other day is like, oh, this looks like this guy just got done reading this book and built his whole belief system and theory off of this book. I don't even know what fucking book he was talking about. I have no idea what book that was, the one that he listed. No, it's common sense. You see a video of 10 black people beating up a white kid in school. It's fucked up. Those 10 black people are fucked up people. They see a video like that, and then they see another one, and then they see another one. It's like, oh, man, all black people are violent. It's that easy for them. That's what happens with a lot of people. You see, Marshall McLuhan said this, by the way. Another thing, if you don't know who Marshall McLuhan is, then you do not know what you're talking about with your relationship to the internet and how you see the world. If you do not understand, even at least understand in your own way the concepts Marshall McLuhan created, came up with, theorized about communication. If you don't understand these intrinsic relations, if you don't have the media literacy to understand the effect of the internet on you and how you see the world, then you don't understand yourself. So I highly advise anybody who wants to really understand, even though Marshall McLuhan was working decades ago, his insight is absolutely genius and his ideas apply directly to the internet. It's almost like he foresaw the internet coming and knew what effect it would have. Um, all of what he says is evergreen and applies to us today even more than ever. So if you want to really understand how your psyche could, like, you could think that it's all your ideas and it's what you believe in, and you could be completely wrong. Like most of your operational consciousness, perspective, identity could be the product of social engineering happening from your relationship with the internet. So when I have memories of having black friends who held serious jobs and positions, who did all these wonderful things that I like to talk about with virtue. Stand up to tyranny, um, try to be honest people, black people who have never committed a crime, black people who weren't inherently violent, black people who didn't like to fight, black people who were pacifists. When I've had friends like that, I know they exist. So when someone says to me, or someone says on the internet, all black people are inherently violent, I immediately know that's not true. But I also know that there is an issue with crime and violence in Black communities. So I'm sitting there with those two pieces of information. I'm like, well, something isn't adding up. There's clearly a reason that it's happening more in Black communities because everything that happens requires a cause. I'd like to, one, theorize about that cause, speculate on that cause, and try to figure out what the real cause of that is. I'm not arguing that it definitely isn't something biological that maybe increases the chance of them committing violence, but I also think that's probably the least possible explanation because I've, one, met tons of black people that didn't have a violent bone in their body, and there's a lot of other information I won't get into, right? Because I'm done and I'm not going to get into an argument with another group of people because yeah, I'm gonna say it because it's what people said to me. Black people from all around the world, not from America, have told me they do not like American black people for the same reason that white people complain about black people in America. That's what was told to me. So that adds another layer onto whatever's happening here. It's worth thinking about. It doesn't mean that African Americans are just bad, but it does argue the fact, because another argument people are making is like all black people are the same all around the world. Just fucking stupid. That right there, though, I've had several conversations, and I'm sure many other people have had conversations too, whether it's a Jamaican person, whether it's someone from Sudan, which those are two people that I talked to that were like, yeah, Jamaicans don't like black people. We don't mess with black people in America. Sudan, same thing. Like I had a friend from Sudan, is like, they don't like to work. They don't, I didn't say it. They said it. And I don't think that's true of all black people in America, but that was their perspective as a black person from another part of the world looking at African Americans. So when these white people are saying, well, all black people are the same, and then they reference whatever African Americans are doing, and then black people from around the world are referencing the same things, you guys have more in common, um, still a skewed perspective. But you have more in common, but you're talking shit about them, but you would both agree on some of the cultural issues of like the values of that maybe African American groups have. I know that's messy. And I know, of course, this whole video, right? What I'm most likely to get is hate from black people now, like I insinuated something that I didn't insinuate. I just told you what I was told. It's not an opinion that I have. I have a way different opinion about socioeconomic status, about subpopulations within the group, um, and it has nothing to do with. But that's the thing is that if these black people from other parts of the world are saying that African Americans behave like this, that means it's cultural. That means it's localized. It has nothing to do with the biological black person, right? And so then what are the reasons for those cultural differences? So when I have all that information, I'm already in the know that a lot of these accusations, these crazy reactionary right white people have, I know they're not true by simple arithmetic, right? Simple cause and effect, logic proofs. I know that those things aren't true. And I just want to dive deeper into whatever this is so we can have a better understanding. Because I thought the reason that we all cared about this is because we wanted to solve the issue, but that doesn't seem like that's it at all. It seems like people just want to be able to blame the problems of the world on other people. Doesn't seem like anyone wants to solve it. If anyone wanted to solve it, they'd have a conversation with me, a civil conversation with me. Like, all right, so well, what do we do to fix this? Okay, so if you think it's all black people, so what are the biological triggers that cause black people? It's so crazy. Like I know it's crazy to think like that. But if we're going to entertain the argument, you say, well, okay, then what are the biological reasons? Like what is biologically different about a black person or neurologically different about a black person who's a low IQ or whatever it is they'll say. So well, let's actually look at the IQs. Let's talk about the standard model. Let's talk about Western Cartesian frameworks. Let's talk about values. Let's talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, because extremely high IQ people have committed genocides. So it's not as much of a correlation as y'all think it is. But that's the things we need to have the actual conversation. And then what's the end result? What's the solution? In your world, it sounds like the solution is to eliminate black people, to enslave or oppress or ethnically cleanse. This is what your argument sounds like. Well, black people are just violent. They're just subspecies. They're just animals. What are they suggesting? Well, what do we do with animals, right? We put them in zoos, we use them for food, you know, we stuff them onto selected locations, we turn them into our pets. I listen to these people and that's I ask myself is what is the what do they think the end solution is? to the problem. I can only think of a couple things that they would do, which are not reasonable or sensible things. But this is how these conversations always start. This is how genocides start. And what's worse is here in America, um, you've got like every group thinking this way about another group. They're like gearing you to be okay with wholesale slaughter of whatever person is opposite of you. They call for white genocides. They were calling for white genocides here in America. They were posting shit like that on Twitter. That was real. They were calling all white people a domestic threat. Government, media, right? And they primed tons of black people, tons of Mexican people, tons of whoever that are non-white people, tons of women against white men. Now they're programming white men against women and all people who aren't white. I can't believe people can't see this. All of the violent, whoever, violent white people, violent black people, dishonest white people, dishonest Chinese people, dishonest Mexicans, psychologically abusive men, psychologically abusive women, physically abusive anybody, ostracize them, cast them out as lepers until they change their behavior. Then, if everyone else is fucking cool and not committing crimes, who gives a shit what they look like? That would solve the problem. This is the most mind-blowing part to me. If you just judge the individual based on how they were conducting themselves, you'd solve all these problems. If we started to actually curate our society for being decent and actually socially punishing those people who had objectively inappropriate, evil, wicked behavior. If we actually grew a pair and fought back against psychopaths and sociopaths and just abusive people, people in the dark triad, if that's what we put our eye, or if that's the group we focused on, people with evil ideologies and people with wicked behavior, if that was the group we all agreed was like, that's the bad group. But even more than that, we said, but why did that person become like that? Not only would we be able to draw a line between decent people and not decent people, we might be able to help those decent people in the present, and more importantly, in posterity, in the future, in the whole future, and maybe we eliminate, eradicate evil. Doesn't mean people aren't going to fuck up and make mistakes, and some people are still going to be shitty sometimes. But maybe we can eradicate this overwhelming, oversaturated, pervasive evil, lack of morality in our society. If we actually targeted that, instead of finding the examples of it in every other group and saying, well, that group is the bad group doing all the bad stuff. It's so fucking stupid, man. So, this is going to be like my farewell to the culture video. I know I've been going back and forth. I don't want to be a part of the culture war anymore, and I'll jump back in it. And like, because my heart is so invested, as much as I've become jaded and radicalized against people in a large part because of the experiences I've been having. I know it's the algorithm, right? I know there's still people out there. I know that I knew people that had hearts and who did care. Maybe I didn't. Maybe they were faking it. Maybe I'm the only motherfucker on earth who cares. But I doubt it. And so that is been large part of why I've just come back, because over and over again to these conversations, because I'm like, I just assume everyone has a functional enough brain and heart to be able to understand what I'm saying. And I think there's people in the community like where we're sitting at a very small table, but y'all know who you are, who understand what I'm saying, who understand love. healthy love, not delusional, toxic positivity love, real love. Understand how important it is that we work together. Understand what virtues are. Understand the importance of reverence and gratitude for creation. Namaste, not becoming nihilists, these types of things. And so I do it for them, and I do it for the hope that maybe. So I don't know. The video just stopped. I'm really hoping that it didn't screw up. So we're going to see.